look who it is. Hello.
Hello.
All right. Just give me one quick moment, Ross. Let me just. Oh wait, I'm trying to. I'm fixing the layout here. I have a little problem. All right.
You're scared, is what you're saying.
I'm what?
Yeah, no, I'm joking. It was a joke.
Oh wait, no, too far. Okay, all right, that should do. Okay, so how you doing, Ross? What's up?
I'm doing good. I'm doing swell. Maybe a little over bloated from all the food, but
yeah, that's typically what happens around this time of year, for sure.
I've been writing a lot about stuff about women's liberation and different kinds of just history. Reading about. I reread the Jakarta Method. I'm almost on the last. I'm on the last chapter, so.
That's always that book's always a really good one to kind of revisit. I've done that myself. Actually, Vincent Bevins has a new book out about the Arab Spring that I have downloaded on my Audible, but I still have to listen to. I have to get some time out of my busy work schedule to actually listen to it.
I guess, do you want to choose the question? I mean, we could start with the multiracial.
Yeah, why don't we start with that? That seems to be the most. So, a multiracial holiday, a new one. So we're ditching Thanksgiving.
Well, I was just thinking because, like, Thanksgiving, at least the concept of it is not a bad one. Like the idea that, like, supposedly, there were white settlers that sat down with indigenous people and had a meal together. I'm sure that happened at some point. I just think it romanticizes, it completely sidesteps the history of animosity towards indigenous people and taking their land. And, we could have, whether we're talking about, celebrating, different prison uprisings, multiracial prison uprisings, or, maybe Standing Rock, or maybe, like the George Floyd riots were pretty multiracial.
Sure.
But yeah, but it has to be actively something that's actively fighting white supremacy, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, at this point in time, I feel like the concept and celebration of Thanksgiving has been totally detached from its, mythologized past that we often talk about. Mm-hmm. So I think, in many ways, Thanksgiving is just like Thanksgiving is now like not even seen as an independent, like sort of separate holiday. It's seen like as the Christmas pregame or the start of the Christmas season. I think if you just leave Thanksgiving alone, it's further going to change into something that it was never really at its, initial conception. I mean, you could see the same thing with Christmas. I mean, Christmas celebrated years back is entirely different to how it's celebrated now. I mean, honestly, if you want to be like an American traditionalist, you wouldn't be celebrating Christmas. It was outlawed. But I think that hasn't Juneteenth sort of become the holiday that helps combat white supremacy? Or it was used as a day so we can talk about these things?
Yeah, but I'm not saying that Juneteenth shouldn't be celebrated. I think it probably should be, but
you want like another holiday on the subject, kind of like how we have a Veterans Day and Memorial Day.
Yeah, except not as gross. I mean, I don't know. This was just something I was thinking about, and because in my mind, a lot of, whether we're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or the apartheid state of South Africa, or the apartheid state that lived, that existed in America and still lingers on in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Or like how, racialized, Paris is, the greatest divider is often race, just by sheer segregation.
Yeah.
And like to overcome those barriers, help people recognize the importance of exploitation, and allows people to work together to fight exploitation, because if they're fighting each other, then they're not fighting exploitation. Yeah, and so it's more of like something that's explicitly about multiracial unity. It could also be like celebrating John Brown's there will always be a fall festival, right? There'll be some kind of, feasting in fall. But I'm just,
So do you want to, instead of Thanksgiving, what, you want to have the Feast of John Brown?
Yeah. Well, you can just have a harvest day, a fall harvest day,
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because like it was Abraham Lincoln that was like initiated like the first like holiday of Thanksgiving. So we can tie it in the sense of like slave liberation in terms of the Civil War. I mean,
the problem I have with Abe Lincoln is he was too, like, he still didn't believe in the equality of black people and white people. He supported the Back to Africa movement.
Yeah.
I think like Southerners and people in the past kind of gave him more, and certain liberals give him more, make him out to be more of a leftist than he was. There was a left-wing opposition in Congress that I would support, even though they were liberal, because I think, as I was talking about racial division, kind of, if you had more racial unity, class struggle would be easier. And then also, at that time, Marxism hadn't really taken off in North America. So, because it would still be being written, but, it would be cool if people celebrated the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, because I've always thought,
wait. Why would Americans want to celebrate the battle between French and Vietnamese? You know what? I wouldn't put that too far away from them, because we do celebrate Cinco de Mayo, which was a battle between Mexicans and French. So I guess you're not too far off.
Well, I always get emotional every time, because it's one of the first times. I'm sure you can find other examples, but it was a decisive victory of a non-white army against a white army.
Yeah, Russo-Japanese War.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's that. But
we don't
was an imperialist power.
I was gonna say we have to write the Japanese off, because they became just as bad, if not worse. So. Yeah.
It was just they had their own empire, but that's a good point. That was a non-white army, but like a non-imperial.
Why don't you just phrase it like this: where a colonized people won against the colonial power?
Yes, okay. Yes, yeah. But I do think it was important at the time to at least like you heard like in Malcolm X's speeches, for instance. He was talking about, you've heard of Dien Bien Phu, and like talking about Algeria, it was a blow to white supremacy. But you're right, it's most important as an anti-imperialist struggle.
Well, speaking of Malcolm X, if you want to and partake in more racial justice holidays, there should be a Malcolm X Day along with Martin Luther King Day. In my opinion, I think I kind of like,
or you should have them on the same day or something like that.
Well, kind of like how in February there's like President's Day, but because like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln's birthday are within the same month, kind of do it within the same aspect, where like they fall in the same month, or it would take a radical change, but I feel like, because we also have Black History Month, I feel like Martin Luther King Day should move to that month, as well as the proposed Malcolm X Day. Thus is set opinion of white man like me, but you know, to each their own.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Malcolm X, you know, like, was a black nationalist, but towards the end of his life, he had changed his mind on that.
Yeah, and, he had a gradual sort of like coming around. I mean, he was, I guess, at the beginning of the time considered like a black separatist that I think many modern day black nationalists now look to. But I mean, I think by the time of his assassination, he was turning like a new leaf and trying to, I think, maybe develop a more intersectional basis. I think it's just because when he did his Hajj, what was it called? His Hajj to Mecca.
Yeah. Hajj to Mecca.
But yeah, no, I think, you know, if we're talking about holidays that highlight, you know, the racial injustice and liberation of our country's past and present, yeah, definitely got to have a Malcolm X Day.
Yeah, because he saw like everybody praying, and there was just many different races. You know, because there are Muslims from all over the world.
It's actually funny you bring that up, because I think it kind of also highlights how a lot of ways Martin Luther King Day was kind of used to, I guess, a subject like what's the word? Man, why am I drawing a blank? To basically docile the masses on racial injustice. Placate. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. I actually studied something very similar in my Philippines video, where Jose Rizal is seen as the national icon hero of the Philippines, but there's a lot of Filipino historians of the leftist camp that basically argue, well, Rizal was chosen by the Americans during the colonial period because A, he died before the American occupation. He was executed by the Spanish. And B, he was also one that practiced like nonviolence or like nonviolent demonstrations and stuff. Yeah, they chose him as sort of a way like, this should be your role model, not to, you know, rock the boat too much or to choose violent revolution. So I saw similar parallels between that and how I think a lot of people, you know, made a compromise with Martin Luther King Day being a holiday and not having Malcolm X have his own holiday.
Do you want to go on to the next subject or another subject?
I mean, I was gonna say, listen, if we're proposing new holidays where people get the day off, yeah, I'm all for it. I don't think you're gonna get any pushback from me on that one.
Yeah. It's more of like an interesting thought.
No, I'm in agreement on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Is revolution possible in our lifetime? And even if it's not, should we work on transgenerational projects? Like, you know, something that...
Well, are you talking about this country?
Yes. I mean, I think we should be building a project that's international. So it's not just in this country. It needs to link up with like movements in other countries. But yes, like, you know, to simplify things. I mean, the only reason I'll emphasize internationalism is because, like, if you just maintain yourself within one country, you have to compete with the capitalist military-industrial complex, which is exponential. And in that competition, you won't be doing as much workers' democracy. You'll be focusing more on producing bullets and bombs and stuff. You know. So you need to go on the offensive, spreading it everywhere before the military-industrial complex can outrun you. And it's also, I think your positions are better if they're more international, but that's just more of a heuristic that I came up with, you know?
Sure. I'm of the view that, you're not going to see, well, hold on. When we're talking about like revolution, what does that entail? Because in my view, there are two types of revolutions. One where there is a massive popular unrest where the government realizes our goose is cooked. There's no way we're going to fucking, you know, shoot every one of these people, we have to stand down. An example of that is the People's Power Revolution in the Philippines, 1986. The other example is, there's a revolution, but it's of an armed struggle, and it usually takes a while before eventually one side overpowers the original ruling class. So which one are we kind of talking about here?
I'm more of talking about the latter. I mean, I think you can have general strikes be part of it, but I think it has to, it has to be bloody, more or less. I'm not like,
so
this isn't a thing where this isn't a thing where I want to be, and I think it also depends on the country, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's circumstantial in most places. Yeah.
And the big thing is there's always a large section of petite bourgeois people that tend to be more reactionary. And then in places where there's more racial division, like South Africa or Namibia or America, there would be probably more reaction.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to say, in terms of we're talking about the latter, no, I don't think that's possible.
Ever.
But I think it's never. Well, no, not ever. No, let me rephrase that. I think that if the type of revolution that you're talking about is ever to happen to America, it's going to be far after the United States loses its status as the first world hegemonic power in the world. So
that can happen in their lifetime.
Sure. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to say when that will happen. I also don't want to rule out that it will never happen, because based on the circumstances that we find ourselves in right now, despite the fact that, you may see a lot of people struggling, I would say most Americans are still too fat and happy to really fucking care. Then there's also a contingent of how many of these people, when shit goes bad, do they have the appropriate class consciousness to develop the right strategies and conclusions? So I think there's a lot of work to do, deconstructing and deprogramming a lot of people brought up on a shit ton of anti-communist propaganda in their education. So it's an uphill battle. I will agree with your follow-up deal that we should be building sort of like a generational a transgenerational project. I see that in growing the labor front. I feel like I always say this. I always say this to David when he's on. The right has the church, has big business, and in a lot of ways has the gun lobby. Leftists are starting to be more accompanying to at least gun rights, but our institutional power needs to be through the unions. But we have to make a more robust labor front in that regards. So I see that growing, and that momentum needs to keep going, after, even if Biden gets reelected or not, or even after Biden.
And we got to take it beyond unions too. I mean, we'll start with unions.
Sure. Yeah. But steps by step, listen, I always liked it when you brought up the Jakarta method. What I always like studying, the Indonesian Communist Party, they had a vast amount of institutional power, and their source of that was in the trade unions. So they had members in the Congress that would try to negotiate with people who weren't communists. And if things didn't go their way, the members of the PKI would, get together okay, get in touch with our union guys. We're going to try and organize a general strike. So I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's important to always keep in mind that we're trying to go beyond the union.
Oh, sure.
And obviously that's not the first thing you always say. Sometimes the first thing you say is if the person's already gung-ho about the union, you're like, well, yeah, but we also want workers' control.
Sure.
But I think we're more or less on a similar page, at least, if not on the same sentence.
Listen, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I totally agree with you that this thing is probably going to continue even long after we're dead, Ross. So
yeah, I question, like, I think a lot of what, like, for instance, you're saying, okay, there was some kind of revolution in the Philippines that was relatively peaceful. I'm sure there was riots and stuff.
The people. Well, I mean, yeah, there was demonstrations and there were some violent crackdowns, but basically the whole country just basically did an impromptu general strike, and that forced the then president / dictator Ferdinand Marcos to step down and flee the country.
But they didn't change the government. It was just a change of the head.
Well, no, they did change their constitution. From a communist perspective, no, it was short-sighted. Because actually, honestly, if you read about the history, the liberal that replaced Marcos actually killed more communists than he did. So take that with it.
Well, no, I mean, those are the points that I thrive on. That's my coffee in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I just like this willingness to side with liberals or like lesser evilism is a lot of times a mind rot, or it's a rabbit hole that like goes nowhere. In my opinion,
what I say is there is convenience amongst some people at the time being. What was that fucking old TV series? Fall of Eagles, where what Patrick Stewart was let in, and he said, don't trust the liberals because they'll betray you. Like, I am of the same mindset. Like, you can work with liberals, but keep them at arm's length. I think that's an important distinction to make.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, I think. I feel like you've become more radical. Do you feel like you've become more radical in the last year or two?
No, I'd say that I pretty much stayed the same in my principles. I guess I'm just more realistic to the world around me, and that I can't change everything. So you either fight against the stream or you try to flow through it. This is a bigger world that's far beyond both of us. It's just, you can analyze so much, but you control so little, individually. I'm saying, I'm not saying that I'm not saying you can't do more through a group or collective action, obviously, but I wouldn't say really my positions have changed too much. Like, unless you ask a interesting question because you're assuming that I have, so I'm kind of curious what you think.
I think we'll see more. Just the way you talked about keeping liberals at arm's length. I mean, obviously we need to be around liberals and around even conservatives and try to be working with them not working with them, but like,
there's coalitions of convenience. Constantly
struggling with them, I should say that.
And coalitions of convenience, and then, once the convenience is over, it's no longer necessary. Yeah.
The fact that you were saying at an arm's length made me like, like, for instance, I don't think we should be. We'll get to this with the institutional independence, but I don't think that we should be like campaigning, donating, or promoting Democratic politicians.
Oh yeah, sure. I said I've had this view since 2020. During that election, I said Biden has my vote. He doesn't have my labor. So like, I wasn't going to donate anything to his campaign.
He doesn't have your heart.
Yeah. Basically, it's it's a coalition of convenience. I had my reasons for voting, but I'm not gonna send a penny to them. That's as far as I draw the line. If they want me to donate, they have to have a platform.
Yeah, but don't you tell people to vote for him? No,
I did argue people to vote Biden over Trump as opposed to staying home or voting third party. Yeah, that's not because of my love for Joe Biden. It's just the reality of the political apparatus that we live under. Like, if you want to talk about a sort of,
that's labor though.
Well, if you want to talk about a transgenerational project, I think changing the electoral system that we currently live under is a thing that people should be focusing on. But that's on a state by state level. I think, there should be a ranked choice voting initiative in each state being brought up, because that helps break up the two-party system and allows for more choices. And it's not this isn't from a real pure socialist perspective, but I think there's just a lot of Americans that, they may not be socialists, but they're definitely tired of Democrats and Republicans, and they would like another viable option.
I guess I'm very wary of placation, and I think liberals can be better at placating people. Like I think that when George, the police officer who who carried out the murder of George Floyd, when he got in trouble and sent to prison, that was a great example of placation. I really want
it to be clear to the public. Publicly executed or something? You want to be thrown to the mob?
Well, ideally, I mean, it would be what would happen is that the mob would take care of it independent of the government, or the government would, I'm not going to say that we should,
Sounds like you're advocating vigilante justice.
No, I mean, I don't. Okay, for the purposes of the people who, are three letters, I do not condone political violence. As much as it appears that I do. Let's just say that.
Sure, only in Minecraft,
yes, only in Minecraft. Only in Minecraft. What was I saying? Basically,
I mean, do you feel like
when they arrested him, they made the police stronger. I want the police to have blood on their badges and to make it clear to the masses that and to the workers specifically, that they are the enemy of the workers.
So,
and
did you want the police to partake in their own form of decimation and have them kill their own kind?
No, I think it just would have been better if the governmental institutions showed themselves for the failure that they are, rather than be able to placate the masses.
Well, hang on. How is it a failure? He was brought to justice and convicted.
That's what I mean. It would have been better if there was a failure.
So you were hoping that it was a Rodney King situation and the cops got off and there was going to be a...
it would have been clear to people, yes. But I mean, that would have had to be in tandem to the people are conscious enough, which I think at the time people were.
I mean, people were fucking pissed. They burned down a fucking police station.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm just saying is, for a lot of liberals, you always have these incidences where they can point to something where we got away with, the system works for one reason or another. You know what I'm saying? And I think this helps slow down this intergenerational project that I'm, and my party, the Progressive Labor Party, is working on. I think, and that's what I would say.
Okay, so let's say that Derek Chauvin was thrown to the masses. Do you think they would have some workers' tribunal set up for him, or do you think they would just immediately hang him by a street lamp? I don't know what would happen after that. It's more of the example that we could say, look, our court system is broken, which it obviously is, even independent of that. How many people, it takes months or even years for them to actually go to trial. How many people are innocent, and then, forced to sign some kind of confession out of fear of going to prison? How often are people, put on some kind of drug charges that were designed to attack, the marginalized racial minorities and leftists? I think this is constantly brought up in the criticisms of the current criminal system. I mean, that's why you see in a lot of marijuana legalizations, there's stipulations added that everybody who is convicted of drug possession or the selling of weed should have their records expunged.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, there's like constantly people are trying to fix the system. I understand that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I just don't. I'm not for
maybe not necessarily
making the government
system,
more efficient,
but making it better for us in general.
Yeah, but the whole purpose of, like, there are some politicians. Okay, I mean, there are two types of, like, ruling class philosophies. One that's like, I'm just oversimplifying. Obviously, it doesn't work exactly like this, but there's one that's more carrot, where they give the working class a little more rewards in strategic areas, maybe in the first world.
Sure.
And less sticks. Whereas there's another philosophy of more emphasis on the stick, more emphasis on police brutality, and even killing leftists. Like, I believe after I want to say Michael Green, but that's not you. That's you. Who was the guy who was killed in Missouri, or where was it? Michael Brown.
Michael Scott? No, that's The Office. Sorry. Are you talking about the guy that killed the pro-Trump guy and then went into hiding, and then the police found him and basically like gunned him down? Are we talking about two different people?
No, I'm talking about, this is like, I think in 2016 or maybe it was 2015, 2016, 2017, when the Black Lives Matter movement started taking off even more. I think it was
you're talking about the guy in Staten Island, I Can't Breathe?
No, that was Eric Garner.
Eric Garner? That's not him? Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, this was in St. Louis.
Michael Brown.
Michael Brown. Yeah, I said it.
In Ferguson. Yeah.
Ferguson. Yes, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Michael Brown and Ferguson. What was I going on? What was I jabbering on about? Oh, around that time period, a little bit after that, or maybe it was over a couple years, like there was a lot of Black activists who are more militant and radical who like mysteriously committed suicide.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
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 And there is like evidence of like the FBI has, like it's actually come out that the FBI has like infiltrated, like there's actual like evidence of that. Infiltrated the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, I don't doubt the FBI has its fingers in a lot of organizations keeping their eye on them. Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm so you have this more of carrot versus stick, and I think a lot of people prefer to support more carrot rather than like focusing on. And I mean, it's easy to just throw out climate change like this, but I'm going to do it. Like we need a revolution to really meaningfully combat climate change, because I don't think that this ruling class cares about workers enough to move the population of Florida out of where they are, or move people out of the Southwest, so it's, I think a lot of people are not, we shouldn't play this game. We should just focus on, thinking tactfully how to organize people, and not just getting people aimlessly, but organizing them on the basis of power. And that means organizing within, even the armed body of men, You know what I mean? Not the cops, but you know what I mean when I say that. And the you know, the industrial working class, you know, obviously obviously transportation unions, obviously, you know, like fruit pickers, although it's very hard, especially the way that like, you know, the ruling class uses undocumentation to like suppress workers.
Sure.
I think a lot of people they'll go to like saying I'm an accelerationist, but I think that first of all, that's not true because like I'm not advocating for things worse. I'm just not advocating for helping our enemies make things better for their own purposes. And I think it's important to have institutional independence, you know?
Okay. Do you believe that in order to get independence, you may have to work with unsavory people at first in order to get the institutional power? Or at least labor?
Yeah, but I think that where that comes in is specifically unions. But like, that's not, like, that's the one time where I'm like, okay, well, you need to like, you know, you're too much of a left comm ultra if you're unwilling to organize within unions. But
it certainly
in general,
helps, though. I mean, you don't even have to do with unions, but it certainly helps.
Well,
I mean, you can make independent organizations. I mean, there's the whole Sunshine Movement that's happening right now.
Are they like environmental?
They're a climate-based group that advocate and lobby for politicians to have more, you know, Green New Deal friendly, eco-friendly policies. Yes, they endorse candidates and tell people not to vote for other candidates. Yeah, that's just that you can do that. I think you can have independent. I mean, listen, I know it's a little reductive to always say like go through the union force, but I mean, yes, union forces work, but you can have independent leftist organizations to help lobby public opinion to our favor and help. Help grow a working class movement that's more in unison and not some like hodgepodge castle of madness of differentiating and competing ideas and principles.
Wait, are you saying as opposed to what you're saying is a party is a hodgepodge?
No, you could even, well, I mean, look, if you're doing the political party route, I think the first thing you should probably do is make sure that your state has like a ranked choice voting system that allows you some breathable room to work within the two-party system. But I mean, political parties at first to advocate for electoral reform so they are more viable candidates. Yeah, that's an option. I'm not going to be very stringent on this. I'm very open.
No, I understand.
I'm very open to pretty much anything here.
I'm trying to convince you to be a little more narrow because I think that elections are just a survey by the ruling class to help, rule the populace better.
Do elections matter or no?
I think union elections matter.
Sure. I mean, so elections matter, but even in the pure, I'm not talking about even voting for your union rep, or if you're a worker cooperative voting for, your manager. I'm talking about even like a strict political sense in terms of like getting people to enact certain public policy. You don't think that doesn't matter?
Well, I think for individual policies, like it does change the utility of people's lives, but I'm not just focusing on utility. I'm focusing on the potentiality of revolution. Like, how does it increase people's class consciousness? If it immediately causes more suffering, but like increases class consciousness, I might be for that. You know what I mean?
So if you think policies that people see work and they see a benefit given to them, you don't think that helps build sort of class consciousness?
No, I don't think that's necessarily.
Really?
I don't think that necessarily. Like, I don't think the New Deal, increased people's class consciousness.
The fact that we have...
I think it diminished. I think it was designed to. Same with the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan was designed to fight communism.
Sure. But
and it was effective. This is why I argue for like institutional independence, because what the state is going to do is just make a more effective state that's about, like either placating people or disciplining people through physical violence. And I'm not going to say exactly, like, I'm not going to be able, because you can't see the future, with the exact.
Sure. Yeah.
And not only that, it's like,
well, you can make a very probable prediction based on certain outcomes, though. Do you agree?
Not as much for like how much does it make people revolutionary.
Do you think America would be better or worse if Trump was president again?
I can't see the future.
Well,
like if you're talking about utility,
well, hold on. Do you think? Okay, let's be more specific. Do you think Trump would be better or worse for workers in this country, based on the policies that he supports?
The first year or so, like you could say, like, I mean, this is just like if you're like twisting my arm, and I'm only talking about the first year, not the reaction to him, because like each year, how there's it. Chaos theory works, right? Like, things get like extraordinarily complicated. But I think there would probably be within this country less suffering. But that I'm not somebody who looks only within this country. I think there would probably be more suffering if you look outside the country.
Sure.
Because
but if you had to choose between less suffering here versus more suffering outside of the country temporarily, what would be better?
I wouldn't choose that, like, on the basis of choosing politicians. I wouldn't do that choice.
Well, it's a factual choice that we have to make, regardless of whether or not you agree with it.
No, see, this is the problem: is that you're creating a movement that, like, you're saying, okay, well, we have to choose Biden over Trump because of like a series of policies, right? I mean, we could talk about trans, or maybe, just a series. He might be slightly better on the environment, this, that, or the other. The thing is like he's still committing a genocide in Palestine. He's an instrumental part in the part of killing.
All right.
And that alienates like most people who are Muslim or Arab, right? Like if we were to have a bomb that went off in Chicago, and Bernie Sanders supported that, I think we'd all be like, no, that's unacceptable. But if like, somebody or like the Squad or Bernie voted for a military budget that hurts people abroad, then we're kind of erasing that. That doesn't matter. Or that's not as important. And what I'm saying is that from my earlier statements about internationalism and racial solidarity, that's actually a very crucial part in overcoming, in coming to class consciousness and the importance of the need for revolution.
Okay, wait, but if Trump is elected, the same thing's going to happen. And American workers are going to also be isolated and worse off.
Well, but in the Russia-Ukraine dynamic, it will be different. And like in general, there is evidence that Trump has like tried to pull out. He pulled out like tens of thousands of troops from Germany.
He also pulled out thousands of troops of Syria that got a lot of Kurds killed.
Yeah, but you can't like make me feel bad about like.
I mean, these Kurds were Marxists.
Well, the Rajah, I don't know how much I would say like that's pushing it.
I'm sorry, were they not the right Marxist?
Yes, they were anarchists, or at least a lot of them claim to be anarchists. I mean, they're whatever. Öcalan, is that his name?
You talking about the president of Turkey, Erdogan?
No. I'm talking about. Let me see if I can find him up. His name, Öcalan. Let me see.
You talking about the leader of the YPK?
Yeah, and Rojava. I'm just using that term. I know that's not like. I think the YPK would be more proper. Head of... I think he's in a Turkish prison right now.
Yeah. You talk about Abdullah Öcalan.
Öcalan.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. That's what I was trying.
Yeah. He's
He's
currently in a Turkish prison. Yeah.
I know we're both, like, mispronouncing it, but like you're definitely pronouncing it more correctly. Yeah, I don't have a problem with pulling out troops out of Syria. But
even if it means, the subjugation and destruction of people who probably agree more with you than disagree with you.
Well, I think the problem is that I think having an American military base and getting funding from America, military base.
You're saying they're sellouts? Because the United States was the only one that would support them?
Well, no, what I'm saying is over a long period of time, that will literally change your consciousness and like what it's just like how like the FARC participating in the cocaine trade changed their consciousness. You know what I mean?
Well, the YPK is not involved in any drug trade.
You're missing the point of what I'm saying. I'm saying where you get the money from.
No, well, you're trying to make a point that eventually they're going to be evidentially corrupted, which, you can't prove.
No, I mean, we can say over and over again, you can't prove that, you can't prove that. I'm trying to make an argument that it's not going to like be an airtight one that's like 1 + 1 = 2, because like, formal mathematics can't be like...
Fidel Castro was funded by the United States for a bit. By your own logic, he would have been corrupted.
Well, there are two proletarian revolutions that have existed. Three. There have been... Well, okay, 4. Now that I think about it. It's the Paris Commune, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, and the Cultural Revolution. That's what I would say. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't think Rojava and the YPK were Marxists, and I don't think that they should have an American air base that was used to bomb people in Syria. I think... I mean, that's what I would say. And that's not to say that there isn't a time and a place to like, think tactfully about like, if China, Russia, or America ends up being on, tactfully on the same side as you for their purposes and they give you weapons. It's one thing if it's a one-time deal. It's another thing if it's like they're regularly giving you aid that will change your consciousness because you're going to start like changing what you do to get that aid, especially if there's a pay differences within your bureaucracy.
Do you think it's worse for like this group to be funded by the United States military or to be subjugated and ethnically cleansed?
Let's say that again. What I'm more concerned about is what builds up class consciousness. So
I think showing solidarity to other Marxists is pretty class conscious to me.
No, I think this is just an excuse to like carry out American imperialism and bomb Syrian people.
No, it's a means to an end. Like two things can be right at the same time.
No, I think that it's if you look at what they're doing, they're not building up on the Bolshevik or Chinese experience. They're trying to build.
Ross, to be honest with you, I think that's outdated.
Well, I mean, I think that Marxism is a science, and
sure, it's a science, but the implementation issued by both Lenin and Mao, I feel, are a bit outdated.
No, what I'm trying to say in rejection and continuity, I think they're doing something that's not even like. I think they would admit that what they're doing is anarchist.
If they were because if it was anarchist, they would be more like the Zapatistas.
No, I think that if you read.
I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. I don't have disdain for anarchists like you do. So, like,
yeah,
I feel like, and this is more of my universal approach. Like, I feel like geography, environment, circumstances are really going to play in on what type of methodology of socialist action you should be partaking in. And in terms
do you know about the Zapatistas recently collapsed?
I feel like that's an embellished sort of like news deal. I think the Zapatistas.
No, it's more of like
they're always going to be around. They had to give up on certain things. They're always going to be around though.
Yeah, until they're not, right? I guess what I would say
until they're not, like kind of how Deng Xiaoping gave a middle finger to Mao now, and that there's no Mao China anymore.
Well, it's not about Mao. It's about like the communes that they had. And that was one of the greatest tragedies in the history.
China's still around. Was it that much of a tragedy?
And this is a huge disagreement that I have with you. It's like, because there was a mistake made with regards to ecology, that like somehow Mao's faction had to be punished or something.
Well,
so we had to go farther, right?
So
no, like if you want to do this kind of mechanistic
where does the buck stop? The people who are in power should be held responsible, right?
I don't think that there are some times where there are certain things that are out of their control or they couldn't have known.
So wait, they were
that doesn't mean that we should side with the right.
Well, hold on.
No, but you're basically taking a rightist position because it was convenient, politically convenient at the time.
It's not a rightist position to challenge authority when they fucked up.
No, but you can challenge authority from the left. You don't have to challenge authority from the right. You can build institutions independent. Like, that's what the Red Guards are doing.
Yeah, the Red Guards also threw Deng Xiaoping's son out of a fucking window and he became crippled.
That's based.
Oh.
I mean, like, but I digress.
I'll keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that what you wanted them to do to Derek Chauvin, and you just wanted them to throw him out a window?
Who's there? Oh, I mean, I think, like, I think a lot of what the Red Guards were doing, which they didn't like fully achieve the highest.
No, they got high on their own fucking power. They got a little fucking crazy.
I think that also there was 3 main factions of the Red Guards, but like you also have to recognize that there were rightists or people who didn't know that they were rightists, who were like using this as an opportunity to just take revenge on random people. But I think that there are some bureaucrats, I mean, like, who, fucking deserved it. I mean, I think Liu Shaoqi deserved his fate. But I want to go back to something that's really important, is like, with regards to institutional independence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if you spend enough time supporting Democratic candidates, or like, like if we're talking about Soc Dems and Lib Left people, right? I think that you will bring in more people who fetishize the law for changing society. And we need to actively say we need a revolution.
Are we a nation of laws or not?
I mean, I think we're trying to get to build a new society based off of our own laws, not these bourgeois laws that are obviously broken and corrupt and like are applied unevenly and stuff like that.
Sure, but do you think that the power exists right now to do that?
Well, that's why you should build within the unions and the military.
Sure. Yeah. We agree with that. I don't want to go over that point again. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, you have to make you have to make alliances with people that you make alliances with your enemies. You don't make alliances with your friends. So
who said that? Was that?
I don't know, but it's true regardless.
It was I think it was Orwell.
Was it? Okay. Regardless, who fucking?
No, I don't know.
I think you're giving Orwell too much credit. I think you're giving Orwell too much credit anyway. Regardless,
I think that might have actually been. It might have been somebody else, though. It might have been Oscar Wilde.
Okay. Regardless of who said it, the point still stands that you make alliances with people that aren't your friends. So these are alliances of conveniences. I think for now, if you support an apparatus that allows you to grow more independently, you should do that. Yes. Until you get to a time where it's no longer necessary and you have what I'm assuming you're trying to explain to people is what to build like the new 21st century dual power.
Yeah, I mean, I think people throw around that word, but I mean, it's to build revolution.
That's essentially what you're talking about, is you're going to have two competing institutionalized authorities that want to, have control of society. One is the traditional bourgeois, and you have the growing working class movement. And eventually, like me as sort of like a Luxembourgist, I can agree with that, and I feel like that is inevitable because like eventually the point is you get to a point of society where policies keep changing and stuff that expose more and more internal contradictions in the system until people can no longer ignore it, and then you get like this what you would call a revolution.
Mm-hmm. Well, what have you? Oh, okay, I don't want to like get into this too much, but what have you read of Rosa Luxemburg? Besides Reform or Revolution. Well, wait, have you read that?
Yes, I have read that.
Okay, yeah. I assume that you have.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I mean that's what I've heard. That's basically her version of Lenin's State and Revolution. Yeah.
There's a lot of parallels.
Yes,
a lot of sentiments that are shared in both of them. I will say that what I'm trying to say, especially at the size that we are now, that if we were to run candidates or support candidates, you'd be bringing in people, especially without mentioning the importance of revolution, like saying, "Oh, we need some kind of upheaval of the current state." You're going to get people who aren't concerned with revolution and will just create like more placation.
Well, those things are not mutually exclusive. Like you can build on things that benefit the working class that piss off the bourgeois class, and then they become more combative, and that creates further class conflict.
I guess what I would say is that it's not only that the state is an instrument of class domination and like exists to suppress workers, but it's what I'm trying to make an argument is that you are going to you're going to change the class character of your movement by like supporting all of these reforms. And I'm not saying that there can't be more militant reforms, but they have to be independent of the Democratic Party. I think we agree that the Democratic Party is a bourgeois institution.
Yeah.
And like that the Squad, almost all of them were more progressive before they went into Congress than after.
I get what you're saying, but if you try to do something independent now, you're going to fail. So I'm not interested in failing and losing progress at the moment. That's why I make this pact with the devil. I rather the devil that I know than the devil that I don't know, which are the Republicans.
I think you can build up grassroots movements within the trade unions, and I know that my party,
but it also helps when there is a government policy in place right now that further encourages and facilitates a growing union movement, and that has been provided by at least the Biden administration with their labor secretary. So,
I mean, I think that's just to placate people.
Again, it could be both. You could also placate people by addressing their material needs while also pissing off the ruling bourgeois class and forcing them to engage in more combative politics, which
No, this is about
the contradictions in the society for people to see. Seeing is believing for a lot of people. You can like preach this shit as much as you want to them, but like unless they actually see it materially like happen in the reality, they're just gonna think like, well, you're just a fucking book nerd. That's really nice, but like, you know, am I gonna have a job? Am I gonna take care of my family? Am I gonna have affordable health care? These are what matter to people. Not like this, like grand scheme of things, theoretical postulations and all that.
No, well, I'm not talking about that. Trading, like organizing workers in their workplace teaches workers their own power. What you're doing is not teaching workers their own power. Because I'm thinking about class consciousness in terms of do they believe?
Hold on. How is not encouraging? Hold on. How is not encouraging people to form unions not, you know, engaging in encouraging class consciousness? You are essentially developing an independent.
It's about their law,
huh?
Because this is all based off of just law and policy. It's not based off of people doing things independently.
Yeah, even if you were a socialist in power, you're still going to implement laws and policies.
You know. No, well, yeah, but not through our own institutions, not like institutions that somebody else handed down.
Are we not going to live in a democracy where we, you know, vote on laws and
well, no, we're going to make a society where the people rule. That's what democracy is. Yeah, like what I'm saying. I don't think liberal democracy is democracy.
And then when workers get together to form a union, they have a vote, right? That's engaging in a democracy.
Yeah, no, there'll definitely be like democratic procedures if that's what you're asking.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I mean, I think what's more important though, and this is where like people might sometimes call me a left com, is I think like
it's okay if you're a left com. It's okay. Bordiga was based.
I'm not a left com.
It's okay. Bordiga was based. He was a funny guy. He was a funny guy. It's okay.
Okay, those are fighting words.
He was a goofy guy. He ate a lot of spaghetti and lasagna.
Okay, that's really good. And pizza, right? And
he might have had pizza. Okay. He might have thought that was counter-revolutionary, though.
Or no, he would have been like, "That's offensive." All the other things, like the Italian.
The other things are more authentically Italian.
I draw the line. Yeah. Pizza. But I think we should. When it's possible, debate things to consensus. If you have the time, of course. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's how democracy works. You have to have a consensus. You have to have a quorum, a majority. Yeah. I mean, that's the basic premise.
No, I didn't say majority. I said
you have to get enough people to agree, right?
Yeah, well, no, what I'm saying is beyond a majority, like
a super majority.
Well, not just a super majority, trying, if you have a workplace where there's 100 people, and there's some kind of you should try to.
Here, I have a question. Here, I have a quick because this is about placating, but like. Do you think it's more placation or installing class consciousness if there was a politician that enacted policies that encourage the growth of worker cooperatives?
I'm not a market socialist.
This has nothing to do with market socialism.
I don't know if it's a placation. I would be indifferent to that policy because I think.
Okay. Is it placating people or is it installing a class consciousness more in your eyes?
Well, I don't think it's installing class consciousness. I think it's teaching people to be petty bourgeois.
Well, if you are enacting a policy where instead of a business closing down shop and moving overseas, the workers have an opportunity to buy the area and have their own worker cooperative, do you not think that is? Do you disagree that that's installing a sense of class consciousness and worker control?
No, I don't think that's because worker control is like a holistic thing.
I think that really matters to the individual Joe who realizes they can still keep their job if they engage in that type of stuff. I think
Yeah.
I think it's more than holistic. That is like a matter of life or death for a lot of people in terms of their
but what
material
happens,
lives.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But like what happens is in competition with other like capitalist firms, and it could be other co-ops, they start hiring people at different rates. They start price gouging of their
there's no studies that show that like worker cooperatives are like smothered by competition of capitalist class of like.
I know Mondragon
typical,
has like outsourced like labor.
Well, I don't like using the Mondragon deal because like I know a lot of people.
Too inconvenient to you?
No, because they were not formed by Marxists. I mean, it developed in like fucking Franco's Spain and they allowed it because they were all priests. They were all priests, so they got away with, not being rounded up as Marxists because they hid it behind some like Christian doctrine. But it's not. I get why people like Professor Wolf likes to use it as an example because it is one of the more bigger and successful ones, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a sort of like revolutionary Marxist front.
Yeah, I think that I don't support co-ops. I don't think that we should be working towards that. I understand that a lot of people come to consciousness.
What about workers co-ops as a means to an end? Again, you're talking about transgenerational building. Do you not think having worker co-ops in that time is better than sole proprietorships?
I mean, you could say that the same thing with the cocaine industry or any industry. Like, wouldn't it be better if it was some fraction of it was the workers controlled just that small fraction, but they have to behave just as any other firm would. That's partially why the FARC capitulated. It's like over decades of like selling cocaine and competing with other cocaine. I
think that's also a fair stretch because you're talking about, a country that was also economically deprived, sorry. Like, do you feel like the United States is in the same situation that Colombia is in?
No, obviously not. But I mean, that doesn't I think that any two countries are going to be different.
Sure. But I think there's a problem when you're trying to use like a global South country in terms of what most Americans face on a materialistic level now.
Yeah, I mean, like Rosa Luxemburg in Chapter 7 of Reform or Revolution, I think she talks about co-ops there, and she says that a lot of co-ops can form where a lot of the exploitation comes much earlier in the supply chain with like raw materials. But then when you have some kind of grocery store, you can, all of the goods have been made cheap through some kind of ruthless competition, right? And then the grocery store buys that and then sells it as a markup. But that's not, I'm trying to work towards global freedom. You know what I mean? It's not, we're trying to build an international project. And I think when you support these people who, the one concession that I have sympathy for, I'm not going to say I support him, but I have some sympathy for Dennis Kucinich because at least he was principally against war. He never voted on any military budget except the first one that came to him because he didn't know any better. And then once he learned about that, he said no. You know what I mean? But they eventually kicked him out.
Well, he lost his he after the redistricting in 2010, he lost his support base. So I wouldn't necessarily they kicked him out. It was just he was kind of squeezed out.
Yeah, but they intentionally I'm pretty sure that the Democratic Party had something to do with that redistricting.
No, it was done entirely by the Republican state legislator because they were in control at the time. Yeah, that's why we have some of the worst gerrymandered districts in the state.
Did you know that, like, in Cleveland, I think it was Cleveland, there was an assassination attempt on Dennis Kucinich?
Yeah. Well, Dennis Kucinich, he goes back a lot of politics here. I mean, he was the mayor of Cleveland in the 70s, so.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and he refused to, like, there's a great, I
think he refused to, what was it, like, it was
privatize.
It was electric company, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he also refused to, like, allow the mob and other sources to, like, basically get kickbacks, in the electrical company's supply chains and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's why they tried to assassinate him. But there's this quote that he has in this, RT, take it or leave it. It was Christopher Hedges does an interview of,
Christopher Hedges writes for RT?
He did for a while.
No.
He did, because it wasn't like, there are some journalists on RT that are not bad. It's just they need some kind of independence from, like, American journalism. And, the Russians happen to know, like, Christopher Hedges knew when he was working there that, like, he was being used for a specific purpose. You know what I mean? That's not here nor there.
Okay.
He now works for the Real News, which is another, because, like, RT kind of collapsed once the Ukraine-Russia war started, but that's not here nor there. There's an interview. There's multiple interviews of Chris Hedges giving interviews to Dennis Kucinich, and one of the things that he said that I thought was, like, kind of profound was, like, there's a certain time in your career that you just have to say, I will not worship your golden calf. And I know that's like some reference to the Bible, but it's like, there's a lot of times where people will just constantly capitulate, and you're actually losing the class consciousness of the movement and the character of the movement. Like, if we say go out and vote for Joe Biden, we're actively, I think, saying fuck you to all the people in the Middle East, and especially the Palestinians.
Well, you can't do anything to help them right now.
No, that's what I'm trying to say, is that, like, you're alienating those people.
They're already alienated.
No, but you're making that a foregone conclusion. I don't think
it is a foregone
true.
conclusion, regardless if Biden or Trump is elected. They're fucked.
No, but that doesn't mean that we can't. When I mean alienated, as I mean, like, as people that you're talking.
You think by not voting, you're doing them a favor?
No, not supporting and, like, promoting these candidates.
Okay, but what about voting for them? I'm not saying go out and canvass for Joe Biden.
Yeah, I'm telling people not to promote them.
Like, what does that mean, not promote? Like, not
don't tell people to vote for them. Yeah.
Well,
don't tell people to vote for them.
So you think it's better? So you think it's better for them not to vote for them? And you really think it's going to work that enough people are not going to vote?
We should spend energy on that. We should build, like, join an organization. Whatever that organization.
Sure. While that's happening, though,
has independence from the Democratic Party.
Sure. While that's happening, though, Palestinians are going to suffer regardless.
Yes, but, like, in order to get, Muslims and Arabs in that organization,
you allow people in power that would disenfranchise them.
No,
that's what's going to happen if you don't vote for Joe Biden. You allow someone like Trump in power.
No, we don't have. If we had the social capital to change the outcome of the revolution, which we don't, we would use that social capital and resources somewhere else.
But we don't. So we're in a situation where the best we can do is some form of harm reduction, where we have to at least admit and acknowledge that we can't really do anything for the Palestinian people right now, but we may be able to help our neighbor, our fellow worker in this country.
It's a long-term project to build.
I am thinking about a long-term project. I don't want to undermine efforts to grow the labor movement.
I mean, it's like, regardless, a Republican is eventually going to win. And everything that they do is going to be handed over to the Republicans. You know, like if they increase the police budget, that's going to be handed over to a Republican. And so then, or like, you know, how Obama increased the national security state, then that's handed over to a Republican who does even supposedly more horrific things. You know, so you're trying to stop fascism by voting, and that's just not possible. And it's also not understanding how Joe Biden has actively participated in fascism in the third world.
I'm not just saying just vote.
And has created more suffering in Eastern Europe.
That's not Joe Biden's fault. That's Putin's fault.
No, I think Joe Biden played a part in that.
No, he didn't. He didn't invade Ukraine.
He didn't have to fund the war.
Who invaded Ukraine?
No, obviously it was Russia, but we didn't have to fund them.
So it was Russia that is bombing those places and making Ukrainian lives miserable.
Yeah, but America is keeping that war alive.
Do you think that if we didn't help Ukraine, Russia wouldn't have invaded?
No, I think that the war would be over by now.
Oh,
and really? I really do believe in no war but class war.
Okay, you really think? I don't agree with you. I don't think that was going to be the case, and I think it's wrong to place that at Joe Biden's feet.
But you think the hundreds of billions of dollars that the United States government gave in like war, you know, in machines of war and money and, you know, everything didn't keep the Ukrainian state afloat?
I think it helped, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that without the West,
but to say that they wouldn't have
the war
fought,
would be over.
But to say that they wouldn't have, so you think they would have been better under Russia?
No, I'm saying including I don't believe in. I'm taking a principled stance on no war but class war, because I think in the long term this
I think that's meaningless to somebody who's getting their house bombed.
I'm saying build up, like, well, why do you take do you support Hamas?
Do I support Hamas like what they do? That's not. No.
I'm saying holistically.
That's not.
You don't
are you talking about critical support for? You talk about critical support for Hamas. My position is that Hamas did what they had to do because of the circumstances that they found them in. I can also judge their actions as atrocious of what they did to a lot of Israelis on October 7th. But my retort to any outrage by pro-Israeli people is like, well, what do you fucking expect? Change your policies and stuff like that. In terms of Ukraine, I'm not a fan of Zelensky. I'm not a fan of any of this, of what his government nor the right-wing people that he placates. I'm more interested in formulating ties and support of independent Ukrainian workers' movements that are in that country. But right now, the ones that I've least read about agree with me that Russia invading is bad and they want to fight them.
Well, I know of ones in the Ukraine that are saying no war but class war, and they don't side. They try to create institutional independence from Ukraine and Russia, and they don't support either side. We should be advocating for turning the guns around. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But we're working towards that. We're not obviously.
Sure, I get that, but
every movement has always started not in power and so small and feeble that it seems like a meaningless movement. But the Jacobins eventually took over the French state. The Continental Congress eventually took over America. The Bolsheviks, which were less than 1,000 year people, 20 years before, eventually took over the state. I mean, I don't understand. There's always this excuse to avoid institutional independence on the basis of getting more numbers. But that's opportunism. It's not actually trying to work for something independent. You know what I mean?
Well, you talk about all these successful attempts, but you omit the ones that failed. So it goes both ways in this case.
Of course. Well, I think that my organization, and I've told you the strategy, to me makes sense.
Sure.
It has a lot of potential.
Sure.
but things are going to get worse before they get better. And once they get worse, people are going to think, well, maybe we need a revolution. I think they'll turn to my organization, other organizations like that.
I don't agree with that. I think things could get worse, and they could also remain worse until they end.
Yeah. Well, I was just, I mean, I could say that too. Like, I think though that, through a workers' state, we have the potential to make things significantly better, more than any state, bourgeois state.
I think a better future is always good to fight for, yes.
Yeah. And I think that this is the best way to do it is institutional independence, organizational independence.
Sure.
I don't support, this is a big thing. It's like, I understand having a ceasefire with the nationalists in China, right, against the Japanese.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we should have ever had communists that took leadership from nationalists. I don't think that we should have ever shared plans with them. I think that we should always be prepared to go to war with them because they are our enemies.
Well, that's a benefit of hindsight too.
Now it's a heuristic that at least my party and a lot of other leftists, especially people that are usually called left comms, but is no nationalism. Say no to nationalism because Hamas and the Baathists and
they're more
Hindi
nationalists. They're more.
They're going to fucking kill the communists. We know this over and over again. It happens over and over again.
So you're concerned about the what's the acronym? The Palestinian Marxist group, the PLFA or whatever. They're currently fighting with Hamas. So you're concerned about their safety and well-being?
Yes, I am. I mean, I should know more about them in all honesty.
They're a really good group. Actually, there's actually a lot of good Marxist history with the Palestinian movement that I think you should read up on. And I'm not just talking about Fatah and all that.
Yeah, I mean, did we answer all of the questions? Let's go back and look at them.
Well, let's take a look here.
At least we talked about them.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we did.
No war but class war.
Except, do you want to expound what does no war but class war mean?
It's about only supporting a war that destroys the bourgeois state and builds a new state for the purposes of, the proletariat taking over the world, the workers taking over the world.
Here's an interesting hypothetical.
And strikes and shit.
Yeah, well, here's an interesting hypothetical. What if the war in Ukraine weakens Russia so much that the Putin administration, the regime, is overthrown?
I'm crossing my fingers. I want that to happen.
And it's done by a workers' movement.
Yeah, ideally
maybe Bolshevik 2.0.
And that's the same thing in Ukraine, though. I hope that too.
But do you feel? But do you feel like that would be nice. I want to agree with you. But let's just look at the circumstances right now, because it seems that even though Ukraine failed to reach its goals in its counteroffensive this year, they're not necessarily in a position to win the war, but they're also not necessarily in a position to lose the war. Russia, meanwhile, is operating at a military deficit. And
I think it's just going to be a stalemate. I mean, it's not.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, more or less, I think.
But let's suppose, because Russia's on the line right now because they're more sanctioned than North Korea right now at the moment. Let's suppose that finally,
but they have a lot more ability to be independent.
Yeah. I know it's a bigger country with more resources. But let's just say that there's finally a breaking point, and the Putin regime is overthrown by a workers' revolution. Would you say then that the United States supporting Ukraine aided in that resolve?
Well,
because again, two things could be right even though you don't agree with them.
Yeah, after the hindsight of history, well, not hindsight. Like once it happened, we can see that it had that part to play.
Mm-hmm.
That you could also say if there was some kind of communist revolution in Ukraine,
sure, or the more ideally solution, they both sides of the people, being used as cannon fodder, realize they're being fucked and they join forces.
I'm not saying look, I know. I think it's important to realize that both the two most conservative czars, Nicholas II, and before him it was I think Alexander III, and then before that was the Tsar Liberator who freed the serfs. Now, he was killed. Alexander II. Yeah, he was killed, and then it led to two of the most conservative czars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people can try to give credit to their mismanagement that led to the revolution. Sure. I don't think that that's important. What we should do is just be developing institutional independence. And yes, there will be.
But that took decades. I mean, Alexander III was assassinated in the 1880s, and the Russian Revolution didn't take place until 1917. So, I mean, during that time. During that time, there was, the building of institutional power while also working with liberals in the new Duma to, establish an apparatus that cultivated that growth.
No, I think it's a little bit different with the Duma because the Duma didn't have any serious institutional power.
Sure, but it allowed for the internal contradictions of that system to be more prominent in the eyes of the Russian people.
And I will say, though, that they were independent as a party from other bourgeois parties. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we agree that the Democratic Party is a bourgeois party.
Yeah.
That would have been stabbing me in the heart if you said no.
To be more specific, that the Republican Party is the party of business owners, while the Democrat Party is the party of the managerial class.
I was more thinking how I think of it is more of the Democratic Party is more of the party of the northeastern elites and the banking elites and more of international capital. Whereas the Republican Party is more of national capital. So the Koch brothers, the DeVos family, but it's more of the Republican Party has a split. So the Trumps, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
that is what I call the exacerbation of the internal contradictions. You're going to see that more prominent in the Republican Party, where you see this very American first, protectionist, nationalist front in the Republican Party that is only going to undermine capitalism even more.
Because half of the Republicans aren't that different from the Democrats.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you put someone like Mitt Romney versus say Chuck Schumer in New York, economically speaking, I'm sure there's not much differences between the two. It's really on the social issues that they try to.
And it's more of just an excuse to cultivate a new voter base for their own purposes. It's not do you know what I mean? That's not to say that there aren't politicians that genuinely believe in getting rid of abortion. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist. But what I'm saying,
it's very real.
Anti-abortion and anti-gay stuff, the family issues, that was a long-term strategy by the Republican Party.
Well,
that wasn't always taken.
It's still a strategy right now. It's still trying to be used.
Yes. What I'm saying is, originally when it was created by politicians and their aides.
Okay.
Their political scientists that work for them. It was trying to carve out a niche of voters and mobilize evangelicals, which prior to this, evangelicals and fundamentalists and the more they didn't really like. It was only Catholics in the 70s that really cared about abortion. Like a lot of Protestants and even like serious Bible thumpers.
Well, the movement you're talking about, the movement you're talking about kind of grew from the Roe v. Wade decision. And there was this sense that they felt that their hierarchy was being challenged, because it's the unspoken rule for a lot of pro-lifers is that abortion is used, or anti-abortion policies is used to control workers, because a woman with children has less job opportunities than, say, someone that isn't. So,
yeah, and the international capital, they don't give a fuck if wherever the actually that I can put a pin in that thought. I mean, we can talk forever, but
yeah,
there is something to be said about the national capital wants more children for their own factories. Whereas international capital can move the factories elsewhere, or well,
that's a problem. That's a problem with Coke when they found out, their operations abroad. Like, oh, you have child labor.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Have you seen Casablanca?
Did you say, have I seen Casablanca?
Yeah.
Like the old
movie.
The old yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Because there's a scene where the head of police, who's really fucking corrupt, the Nazi, he's in a casino, an illegal casino, and the Nazis break into the casino, and he's like, the police officer, who's French, the head of the police, is like, oh, I'm shocked, there's gambling, the minute the Nazis break in, and then then somebody from the casino comes up to him and is like, would you like your winnings in a bag, sir? And he's like, sure.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
Feigned outrage.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is a good talk. I mean, I don't think we got anywhere, but we got somewhere. I think
do we at least understand each other better?
Yeah, I mean, I still think you're really wrong, but I mean, I think that's probably the same for you. I mean, that you think I'm wrong. So
I still love you though. So
yeah, that's good. I'll try.
You keep trying.
Anyway,
on that, okay.
Yeah. Well, peace and love. It was a real pleasure. Anyway, just one last plug. Sure. Check out the Progressive Labor Party, and the website is plp.org. So that's the last thing I'll say.
I have to put a note in it to remind myself to put it in the YouTube description whenever I decide to put it on YouTube too. So, okay,
that's awesome.
Yeah, no problem, man. All
Peace.
Right, take care, man.
You too.
Bye. And I don't know. I'm just kind of chilling right now. If anybody wants to talk, I don't have to go just yet. But yeah, just me talking. Anybody want to have any questions in the chat? No, not is anybody even watching right now. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna wrap it up. I have to go to the bathroom anyway. So, thanks guys for tuning in, or thanks for watching if you're watching the recorded episode. So, take care, guys. Peace.